It's time for Talk With on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM in the city. An opportunity to speak with various government, political, and community leaders about the issues that affect you. Each week, we interview the newsmakers in Anne Arundel County, Queen Anne's County, and our state leaders. Now, here's the host of Talk With, WNAV News Director Jane Schlegel.
Welcome to Talk With. I am Donna Cole, and I am filling in today for News Director Jane Schlegel. My guest today is Mayor Gavin Buckley, and thank you, Mayor, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Donna. Thank you.
I don't need to remind you, but we're going to start off with tragedy. On June 28th, less than 2 miles from where we are, the unthinkable happened here in Annapolis. A gunman launched an attack on the Capitol, on Annapolis, and on journalism, and as such on the world. Killed were Wendy, Rob, Gerald, Rebecca, and John. On July 12th, at a private memorial for Wendy, Rob, Gerald, Rebecca, and John, one that you were at and one that I was seated about 10 rows behind you, Rick Hutzel, the editor of the Capitol, made an impassioned plea for journalists. Do you remember what that was?
He told us not to forget them. He told us to always not let this country become numb to this kind of devastation, and that he wants politicians to fight for what happened, and I'm going to be one of those. Yeah,
so he asked journalists specifically to say, to ask politicians, you're one, a politician, and I'm the journalist, and you're sitting in front of me. He asked that we ask you, how do we make what happened in Annapolis, the last mass shooting in America? So I'm asking you that now.
So I say, well, the solution to this has to come from Republicans and Democrats, right? When these shooters go into these places and they shoot kids and teachers and journalists, they're not asking them whether they're Republicans or Democrats. They're just causing, devastation and horror or terror, all those things. So pointing the finger at one group or the other is going to be the worst way to solve this. We have to confront this situation that we have, and that is we have an epidemic. And we have a lethal cocktail of unaddressed mental health issues, and then we have easy access to guns. That cocktail has killed over 7,000 people this year in mass shootings, and that doesn't count domestic violence, that doesn't count gang, that doesn't count suicides, all those other things that are caused through violence. So we have to address it, and we have to solve it together. And so I'm going to work closely with people on both sides of the aisle to say, look, this is all of our problems, and the only way we're going to fix it is together.
Have you thought specifically on what you can do here in Annapolis for, let's take part of that, the mental health part of that?
Yeah, so I know there's increased capacity on mental health expansion through Anne Arundel Medical Center. We need to make sure, I think we could look to Crownsville, some expansion, that's out of my jurisdiction, but we need to have more counseling in school. We need to have more options for people to talk to. So I just think communication is a big part of mental health, and that has to be a big thing that we think of as a community.
And the stigma attached to it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a confronting thing, but look, it's not a moral failing if you have mental health issues. That's not, you haven't done anything wrong. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to any family. We have to realize that, but we have to be vigilant, and we have to see the warning signs soon, and communicate.
How did this change you as a person? Not as a leader, but as a person?
Look, when you sign up for this job, I'd say this is the last thing that I ever thought would happen. I'd say this is the last thing that I ever thought would happen to a community like Annapolis. But it does. And so what I think it does make me appreciate is it makes me appreciate my family, makes you, hug your kids a little harder. And it makes you appreciate the people that work here, the first responders, the courage of the journalists to get a paper out the next day. On the other side of it, I'm just very proud to be here at this time. Yeah. As
a leader, how did this prepare you now to reach out to other elected officials when, unfortunately, this will happen in their communities?
So the first thing we're going to do is recognize 1 month to the event on the 28th. and have a healing event and a show of solidarity for the journalists and the first responders, and have people come out and say, we're not going to forget, we're going to stay with it. After that, I'm going to move forward to reaching out to other mayors whose jurisdictions have been afflicted with this same thing, and trying to form a coalition of those mayors so that we can come up with solutions. Then every year we're going to repeat this event that we're doing on the 28th, which is an event for free speech. Free speech is at the core of our democracy. Journalists wrote the history of our country and every country, so we have to stand up for them and say, that they're invaluable, and that we will always stand for that First Amendment.
I speak for journalists, and I say thank you to that. It has been said by many, including my husband, and I'm sure you, in your past, running a restaurant is one of the most challenging, awful careers you could choose. How does that compare to running a city?
I think there's a lot of challenges that you can't prepare for. Being a mayor is like getting the keys to the car without any driving lessons, and then you're told not to crash the car. So I love a challenge. I love the excitement of new frontiers, and so I'm enjoying the job even with the horror that just happened. I look forward to the next 3.5 years, and I'm excited about some things that we can do for the city. And I think we can use this moment as a moment to show how much we love the city. And so if there's any upside, it can be a thing that brings all of our communities together and makes us realize, this happened to all of us. It's personal, and this can just make us appreciate what we have more than ever, and appreciate our city more than ever.
All right, we're going to take a short break. More when we come back with Mayor Buckley. This is Donna Cole on Talk With. We will be right back. Welcome back to Talk With. I'm Donna Cole. I'm filling in today for WNAV News Director Jane Schlegel, and I'm in the studio with Mayor Gavin Buckley. We're just talking about the challenges of running a city. And I told you I'm the quirky one here, ask the quirky question. So here we go. Because of my involvement as a skateboarder, but my involvement with the skate community in some ways, because, kids, I've been told you've been out looking for a new skate park location. I've been told you actually went and scouted out a couple locations. I've been told the skaters aren't necessarily happy with the location across from the police station because, I don't know, skaters aren't. Can you tell me what's going on there?
I mean, that location that's just an idea. That's not, we haven't even approached anybody about that. So I don't think I haven't approached the police department, I haven't approached particularly the skating community. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get things to do along the bike trails. And that's there's an opening there. There's some areas around that back access road to the Lowe's Hotel that I want to open up, and I want to make it a corridor so that we can create a bike path that gets you from the historic district all the way to the hospital, all the way to the mall, and all the way to the Parole Town Centre. And so if we can make it, we need to create safe biking. So on terms of skating, there's just some ideas of where we put a skate park. Now, I'm just looking at best practices in other cities in the country, the Austins, the Boulders, the Charlestons, the Burlingtons, and people there's some negative perception out there about skate parks, but if you actually drill down on it, it's a form of exercise. It's not just skaters, it's kids on scooters, it's soccer mums in rollerblades.
No, I'm all for a skate park, by the way. It's just the skaters were a little apprehensive about being so close to the police.
I think that this is about bringing people together too, I think that the idea is that we need to communicate with one another on another level. And so if it was a sponsored a park and the skate community felt the connection to the first responders, and it's not just police, it's police and fire, I think it would be a good thing. That's just an idea. Now, the people that live right next to that police station probably hate this idea. I haven't even approached them, and it's just a theory. It's not even on the drawing board.
And to be fair, for those that don't know, we do have a skate park at Truxton Park, which the skaters, they're a little not in love with because it's so far back, and they would like to make Annapolis a showplace for what they do.
And it should be big. big. It should be, and there's a model in Fremantle, where I'm from originally. They put one in the middle of the town, and everybody fought against it and said it's going to be graffiti artists and drugs and all sorts of crazy assertions or whatever, and it ended up being a beautiful place that everybody in the community uses, that people come and have picnics and watch the kids skate, and if you do it right, it can be a real asset to your community.
Do you skate?
When I was a kid I did, but not anymore. My old knees can barely run now, so there's no way. I snowboard, and that's but slowly.
Okay. Pip Moyer, speaking of recreation, privatizing Pip Moyer Recreation Center, has this been something on your radar? Are you considering it?
Look, I've campaigned against privatizing it, but I get the information. I've had meetings with the Y and places like that. I've been out to some of their facilities and saw what resources they can bring. I think it's all on the table. Some of the councillors want to go down that route. I'm only one vote, but I wouldn't do anything that wasn't what the community wanted. If it can expand our amenities, and if it can be accessible to people and doesn't exclude anyone, then we should look at it. If not, but we do need to think of a way to reprogram it so that we get the membership up. And that we maximize the facilities. So, if someone brings those resources, we would take a look at it.
And speaking of privatizing, Jimmy DeButts recently had an editorial in the Capitol saying, why don't we just privatize the Market House? Because if you go from history, it hasn't shown that the city has been the best landlord. What's your thought?
Yeah, my thought is that we shouldn't sell city assets. My thought is that we should just manage them properly. And every time we don't manage an asset properly, a golf course, the old rec center, we throw our hands up in the air and we say, let's sell it. And I think that's short-sighted, because when you sell something, you make a short-term profit, but you lose 100% of control. And there are times when you need that control. Take the pump house situation we have coming up now. That potentially could get put into the playground. If we'd had control of the rec center, it could have been put behind the rec center and it wouldn't have affected anybody. So there's a great example of a bad decision we made. I'm going to make sure that the Market House works. If it doesn't work, I probably won't get re-elected. I campaigned on fixing the Market House. The Market House looks fantastic now. I believe locals are going to be proud of it.
But not open yet, and it was May, then June. And by the way, I think you were intelligent not to say that you would walk the plank on our last interview here. So what's the ETA now?
So they just passed the health inspection. They were about to get a use and occupancy inspection, and then the city decided to do one more test on the gas lines, just in case anything got interrupted when they moved, the counters got moved. The reason they didn't redesign the back of the line in the Market House is so that they could get the place open in 3 to 4 months. That's a very short window to open a business. And so they didn't interrupt any of those lines, but the city decided to just do a double check on them anyway. They found a couple of leaks. And so they're under a pressure test right now. They're going to find out today whether that second pressure test gets them across the line. If they pass the pressure test today, and I understand these pressure tests, they empty the gas out of the line, they pump a lot more pressure in the lines than it normally is held. And from what I understand, most of the restaurants in the city, if they were applied, that test was applied to them, they wouldn't pass. So anyway, the last I heard is they're waiting on the results of that today.
Well, wait. So should they be checked? Most of the restaurants in the city?
No. I mean,
Okay.
no, they've been operating. I mean, we haven't had any gas fires in the city. So
Knock
I would
on
say,
wood.
yeah. I mean, what it does is just puts a lot more stress than, and we're old buildings. We've been around for a long time,
So ETA, you don't want to say anything?
Look, if they pass today, they could have a UNO on Monday, and that would mean they would be ready for the public after that. But they'll probably take a week to some training,
Right.
and then after that sometime. But it'll be this summer.
But you're happy with the way it looks?
Look, it's beautiful. Yeah, they've done a great job. Yeah.
All right, we're going to take another short break here on Talk With. We will be right back with Mayor Buckley. Welcome back to Talk With. I'm Donna Cole. I'm filling in today for Jane Schlegel, our news director. I am with Mayor Gavin Buckley. Where are we at with the Annapolis Renewable Energy Park, which was slated for completion in June? Is that completed? Is it 100%?
We are still waiting. I think we're pretty close. So September is, I've been told that. We're looking at that asset of the city and how we can do something a bit more exciting in that area too. We're talking about doing a kind of an energy park where we have visibility in hydroelectricity, just as a sample for kids, or other kinds of renewable energy.
To be able to have people come there and see this stuff on...
Yeah, Waterworks Park is a really beautiful place. If we could get some walking trails and some bike trails around that area, you could go past the dam, you could go up to the ridge where the Renewable Energy Park is, you go back down into sort of other areas where we could do... Or
further down, maybe a little bit on Defense Highway, walk down where we have a community of wintering bald eagles, by the way. So that would be cool. And I know a lot of birders would love to be able to do that, to see those. So that would be cool. Okay, the renewable... And some of the stuff comes from, by the way, the city manager monthly reports, which I love. Not reading for enjoyment, but for reading for what's going on in Annapolis. The one that was most recently posted is May 2018. City Dock Tidal flood mitigation. Still waiting word on FEMA grant application. Do we have word?
So the FEMA grant that we were getting was for the flood mitigation plan, which is a $10 million plan that, and we've all experienced it, that when the surge comes up, it floods up to Newman Street and City Dock up to the businesses, and they have to sandbag. So that flooding has been gone from a frequency of 4 or 5 times a month to a year to over 50. So and that's sort of embarrassing when that happens on a weekend and we've got tourists in here. So that plan was in place before I got into place.
Yep.
We needed to find the funding. The governor and the speaker found $3 million for us this year. FEMA's bringing $3 million. That's what that talk is about. And that gets the first phase, which we hope to start next year. And then it's another year we have to get the last 3 or 4 million.
So you're looking at starting that next year. You were also going to redo Main Street as well.
Yeah, so with rebricking of Main Street, we did some patching just to get us through. We are now deciding how we're going to stage that, whether we should do the flood mitigation first and then the rebricking afterwards. So that's still up in the works. Yeah.
Okay, in recent history, spring, we had a couple really big storms with a couple really big problems, flooding, and there was some flooding coming down from Pinckney Street to the rear of Market House. Well, depending on how you look at Market House, that's different. And is that part of the flood mitigation that you've already discussed, or is that something new that should be considered?
Yeah, so what will happen with the flood mitigation plan is all the storm water will run into the storm drains, and then the pipes of the storm drains will be redirected to a pump house. That pump house will then push water into Spa Creek will push it out faster than it comes in. And so that will stop the flooding. The flooding will be a thing of the past. Now, this doesn't talk about, catastrophic stuff. If a catastrophe happens like Katrina and that's a different situation. And then we have to talk about what we're going to do about global warming, all this sort of stuff. And that's another conversation. But this will take care of the nuisance flooding. On the flooding that comes into the back of the Market House, we had that incredible amount of rain for that month there, which felt like 100 days of rain.
Right.
And there were huge quantities of water coming down Pinckney Street and at the curb cut, which lines up exactly with one of the doors of the Market House. It was rolling into that area, and I think we're working on a solution to that.
Okay. Landfill gas mitigation, and what's going on there?
I think that on every landfill, and this is all new for me, but on every landfill, when you cover up trash, it creates gases, methane gases, and then you have to vent the underground and burn that off as it comes out of the ground. That's what that's about. So,
do we have a problem currently?
It was just the standard problem that any landfill has, where you've got to actually burn it off as it comes out. Yeah.
All right. Overtime expenses. There seems to be, I'm going to read one, and I believe this is for fire. For the month of May, the department used 957.75 hours of overtime at a cost of $53,620.94, which represents a usage of 12.447% of our total annual budget available for overtime. Our year-to-date overtime expenditures are $498,914.14, or 116.3% of our annual OT budget. It seems like we're a little understaffed, huh? Police and fire, perhaps?
So I think this is before, so this is a May report. So this is before we've got the new city manager and auditor, Teresa. We're not going to budget like that anymore. So what we were doing before, I think, was there was no, the budgets were over on police and fire every year. If you look back on every single year,
they are.
We haven't budgeted the way we're supposed to budget. So it's been a kind of a false premise.
And
so,
are there enough personnel?
We're a little short on police and fire. Definitely. I mean, and we have that challenge like every jurisdiction has. I mean, recruiting is really hard in the police departments now. We need to show some appreciation for that tough job they do. That's the most thankless job, especially police, that have to do. And so we're struggling like any municipality, trying to hire good people, trying to incentivize hires, and trying to keep your people with you.
Discussing the events that you have moving forward coming up soon. You have a couple of events. One we know is for the Capitol, freedom of the press. You need volunteers for that, I understand.
Yes, we would love some volunteers. So this is an event on the 28th. It's an all-day event. There'll be speakers. There'll be musicians.
Musicians, who are they?
So the first people that signed up to do the event were some young kids whose mum lives here. They grew up in this town and they've gone on to be pretty successful. It's a band called Good Charlotte. One of the band members, Benji, once he heard, and this, the news went all over the world about this attack on journalism. He was texting me from Italy, from his honeymoon with Cameron Diaz, and he was saying, "Can I help? What can we do?" And I said, "Well, if we put together a benefit, would you headline it?" And he said, sure. And so we have built the event around them throwing all their resources at this event. So on the 28th at 12 o'clock, we will start with the national anthem, and we've got a great sax player going to play the national anthem. There'll be speakers, there'll be food trucks, there'll be togetherness, there'll be us just showing our support of the first responders. So anybody that wants to volunteer, we would love the help. Anybody that wants to come and support the event, all the 100% of the ticket proceeds will go to the journalists, the families, and the first responder ideas.
Then information about that is on the City of Annapolis Facebook page. On that same day, July 28th, there's another event, Sailors Triathlon.
Yep.
So Annapolis is going to be pretty busy that day.
But a good busy.
The
triathlon happens in the morning. It'll all be over by 9 o'clock. And the triathlon is the Sailors Tri. It's about kind of bringing people together. People would know that I reached out to the governor's office and I reached out to the county executive and I said, let's do an event. Let's work as a team to show people that people from three different forms of government, from different parties, can work together as a team, and symbolically we can finish this triathlon together. So I'm going to run, the county executive's going to do the first leg, the swim, and the lieutenant governor's going to do the bike leg, which goes from City Dock over to Greenbury Point, round the antennas, back across the bridge, and he'll meet me at the stadium, and then I'm going to limp off from the stadium and try to finish this. But we might not win.
You are a runner, though. You run every morning, do you not?
I run reasonably regularly. I've had a little injury lately, so I'm going to have to get creative on that.
All right. Speaking of busy in Annapolis, I asked you last time you were here about fixing this issue with the so many crosswalks and people coming at you from every different direction, and drivers don't know what to do and pedestrians don't know what to do at Market House. And you had some ideas.
Yeah.
Will those ideas be put into place anytime in the near future?
We're designing it now. So there is we all play that Russian roulette.
We do.
At Mission Barbecue, whether you're driving or whether you're a pedestrian, you always take that risk at that intersection. So what we are proposing is a timed light, one at Mission Barbecue and one at capital T's. And so we will create a T and not a circle at capital T's. We'll be able to create some more parking. We'll be able to actually create a park. And that timed light, when the crosswalk says to go, you'll
Capital
be able to,
T's. Tell me what.
the capital T's building right there.
Oh, on the other side, all the way over.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So next to the
where nobody
liquor
bothers
store.
yielding, where it says to yield.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. Now that
So-
makes sense.
So when the crosswalk light says to walk, you'll be able to walk diagonally and whatever direction you need to walk in that time. When the crosswalk light says don't walk, the cars will be able to go freely. And when the arrows say to turn, the cars will be able to turn. And I believe that will regulate the traffic there and get that suicide run as a thing of the past.
So this is in motion. This plan is in motion.
It is, yep.
All right. What have I missed that you would like to relay to the people of the city of Annapolis?
I want to say how proud I am of the citizens and the city and the first responders and the journalists. This city stepped up in the face of the most awful thing that could happen to your community. The outpouring of love and the outpouring of gratitude from people we can't say enough about, because we got so much response from the citizens and then also from the whole world. So we should be proud as a city.
Mayor Buckley, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
This is Donna Cole on Talk With. We will see you next week.
You've been listening to Talk With on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM in the city. A weekly program focusing on various government, political, and community leaders, speaking about the issues that affect you. Join us again next Monday afternoon at 2 for Talk With on your hometown station, 99.9 FM and 1430 WNAV.